My son looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, I can't sacrifice my future for a blind kid." He walked away and built a new life with his mistress. But 12 years later, when my granddaughter won $4.5 million in international piano competitions, his lawyer called, and what I did next made him regret ever coming back. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never imagined that at 70 years old, I'd be standing in the fluorescent-lit hallway of Riverside Medical Center, watching my son pack his life into a duffel bag while his 3-year-old daughter lay sleeping just 20 feet away, her world forever changed by an operation that couldn't save her sight. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and recycled air, that particular institutional scent that seems to seep into your clothes and hair. I'd been here for 5 days straight, sleeping in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, drinking terrible coffee from machines, and praying for miracles that never came. Now, as I watched my son Damien methodically fold his clothes and zip up his bag, I realized I'd been praying for the wrong miracle. "You can't be serious about this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The hallway was quiet except for the distant beeping of monitors and the soft squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum. "Damien, please. She's your daughter. She needs you now more than ever." He didn't look at me. Just kept packing with mechanical efficiency, the same way he'd organized everything in his life since he was a teenager. Damien had always been a planner, always thinking 3 steps ahead. I'd thought it was a strength. Now I saw it for what it really was, the ability to calculate the cost of everything, including his own child. "She needs more than I can provide, Mom," he said flatly. His voice was steady, controlled, like he was discussing a business decision rather than abandoning his daughter. "Sienna and I have talked about this extensively. We've looked at the numbers, considered all the options. We can't raise a disabled child. It's not feasible for our situation." Sienna. Even her name made my stomach turn. She was standing at the end of the hallway, scrolling through her phone with perfectly manicured burgundy nails, her honey blonde hair falling in expensive waves over her leather jacket. She was 30 years old, worked in pharmaceutical sales, and had been sleeping with my son for 8 months while his wife Rachel was dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I'd only met Sienna twice before. The first time was at Rachel's funeral, where she'd had the audacity to show up in the back row, watching Damien with proprietary interest even as he stood at the altar giving his wife's eulogy. The second time was 3 weeks ago when Damien had brought her to my small apartment in Crescent Falls to announce their engagement, introducing her with forced cheerfulness as if I should be happy that he'd found someone new so quickly. "Damien, please listen to yourself," I said, moving closer to him. My knees ached from days of sitting in hard chairs, and I felt every one of my 70 years in my bones. "Lily is 3 years old. She just lost her mother 6 months ago. Now she's lost her vision. You're literally all she has left of her parents. She has you," he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were the same dark brown as his father's had been, but where Thomas had been warm and compassionate, Damien's gaze was cold and calculating. "You raised me, didn't you? You managed just fine as a single mother. You can do it again." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He said it like he was offering me a compliment, acknowledging my past sacrifices, when really he was asking me to make them all over again. "I was 35 when your father died," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I was young enough to work 2 jobs, to stay up all night when you were sick, to have the energy to do everything that needed doing. I'm 70 now, Damien. I live on $1,400 a month in Social Security. My apartment is 500 square feet. I don't have the resources or the physical capacity to raise a child with special needs." "Then maybe it's time to consider other options," he said, zipping his duffel bag with finality. "There are excellent residential facilities for children like Lily. Places with trained staff, therapeutic programs, all the specialized care she'll need. She'd probably be better off there than with either of us fumbling through something we're not equipped to handle." "Children like Lily," I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "She's not a category, Damien. She's your daughter. Her name is Lily Aurora Morrison. She loves strawberry yogurt and butterfly stickers. She used to sing, "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," every night before bed with her mother. She's not a problem to be institutionalized, she's a little girl who needs her father. Something flickered across Damien's face, maybe guilt, maybe annoyance, but it was gone before I could identify it. He slung the duffel bag over his shoulder and checked his watch, an expensive Rolex that Rachel had given him for their 5th anniversary. He was still wearing it. I wondered if Sienna knew it was a dead woman's gift. "I know who she is, Mom," he said with exaggerated patience, like I was the one being unreasonable. "But I also know my limitations. I'm 33 years old. I've got $87,000 in student loans from law school. I'm trying to make partner at Henderson & Associates, which means 80-hour work weeks for at least the next 2 years. Sienna and I are planning to get married next spring, and we want to start our own family. We can't do any of that while trying to manage a blind child who's going to need constant supervision, expensive therapies, specialized education, and probably lifelong care. So your solution is to just discard her?" I couldn't hide the disgust in my voice. "Pretend she doesn't exist so you can have the life you want?" "My solution is to make sure she's placed with someone who can actually give her what she needs," he shot back, his voice rising slightly. "Whether that's you or a professional facility, she'll be better off than with a father who resents her for derailing his entire future." "She didn't derail anything, Damien. She's a child who got sick. That's not her fault." "I didn't say it was her fault. But it's also not my responsibility to sacrifice everything I've worked for because of bad genetic luck." The coldness of it stunned me into silence. Bad genetic luck. That's how he saw his daughter's blindness. Not as a challenge to overcome together, not as a condition to manage with love and support, but as bad luck that he had the right to walk away from. Sienna appeared at his elbow, looping her arm through his with practiced intimacy. She looked at me with barely concealed impatience, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Damien, we really need to go," she said in a voice that suggested this had been rehearsed. "Richard is expecting us at his office at 4 to finalize the guardianship paperwork, and we still need to stop by the apartment to meet the movers. They're loading our stuff for the drive to Portland, and I want to make sure they don't damage anything." Portland. They were moving to Portland, Oregon. 1,400 miles away from Crescent Falls, Washington. Far enough that accidental encounters would be impossible. Far enough that Lily would grow up never knowing her father's face, never hearing his voice, never having even the possibility of him changing his mind. "Guardianship paperwork," I said numbly. "You've already drawn up legal documents." "Of course," Sienna said, as if this were obvious. "We needed to make sure everything was handled properly. Richard has prepared all the paperwork to transfer full custody to you, Dorothy. All you need to do is sign, and Lily becomes legally yours. No complications, no shared custody arrangements to worry about. Clean break. Clean break. Like my granddaughter was a business contract that could be dissolved with signatures and filing fees." "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "If I say I can't take her?" Damien shifted uncomfortably. "Then we'll have to pursue state custody options. Child Protective Services can place her in a specialized foster home or residential facility. They have resources for situations like this." "Situations like this," I repeated. "You mean situations where parents abandon disabled children?" "Don't make this dramatic, Mom," Damien said, his jaw tightening. "We're trying to do the responsible thing here. We're making sure Lily ends up somewhere she can be properly cared for. That's more than a lot of people would do." "More than a lot of people would do," I said slowly, letting each word hang in the air between us. "You want credit for not just leaving her on the hospital steps. Is that the bar now? You're a good person because you're going through legal channels to abandon your child instead of just disappearing?" "That's not fair," Damien said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not fair. It's not fair that Lily's mother died when she was barely 2 years old. It's not fair that she developed a rare degenerative condition that destroyed her optic nerves before she turned 3. It's not fair that the one parent she has left is standing here with a packed bag, ready to walk out of her life forever. You're absolutely right, none of this is fair. Damien's face reddened, and I saw anger flash in his eyes. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to stomp his feet when he didn't get his way. But that little boy had grown into a man who could look at his own child as an inconvenience. I didn't cause Rachel's cancer, he said defensively. I didn't cause Lily's blindness. I'm dealing with circumstances beyond my control, and I'm trying to make the best decision for everyone involved. The best decision for everyone? I stepped closer to him, looking up at the son I'd raised, the man I barely recognized anymore. Or the best decision for you and Sienna? Sienna stiffened beside him, her hand tightening on his arm. Mrs. Patterson, I understand this is emotional for you, but Damien has the right to build a life that works for him. He's already been through so much with Rachel's illness and death. He deserves a chance at happiness. And Lily doesn't? I turned my attention to her, this woman who was taking my son away from his daughter. She doesn't deserve a chance at happiness? She doesn't deserve to grow up knowing her father loves her, even if circumstances are hard? Of course she deserves happiness, Sienna said with artificial sweetness. That's exactly why we think professional care might be better. Dorothy, no offense, but you're elderly and on a fixed income. Damien is emotionally exhausted and financially strained. Neither of you can give Lily the kind of specialized attention and resources she'll need. A facility with trained staff, therapy programs, and other special needs children might actually be the kindest option. The way she said elderly made it clear what she really thought, that I was too old, too poor, too much of a burden myself to take on another responsibility. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was fooling myself thinking I could raise a blind 3-year-old at my age, with my limitations. But I looked at Damien, really looked at him, and saw something that made my decision clear. I saw a man who was choosing the easy path, the comfortable path, the selfish path. I'd raised him better than this. His father and I had taught him about duty, compassion, and sacrifice. Where had those lessons gone? If you walk out that door, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall, if you leave Lily here like this, don't expect to come back. Don't expect to change your mind in a year or 5 years or 10 years and suddenly want to be part of her life. Don't expect forgiveness or understanding or some tearful reconciliation. If you do this, you're not just leaving her, you're choosing to be a stranger to your own daughter. Damien's jaw worked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Finally, he said, I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I'm asking you to understand that I can't be what she needs. I can't be the father of a disabled child. I don't have it in me. Then you don't have it in you to be a father at all, I said. He flinched like I'd slapped him, and good. He should feel every word. Sienna tugged on his arm. Come on, baby. We've done what we came to do. Your mother can make her decision about the guardianship, and we can move forward with our lives. Damien looked at me one more time, and I saw something in his eyes that might have been regret or might have been relief. I couldn't tell anymore. Goodbye, Mom, he said. Not, I love you. Not, I'm sorry. Just goodbye. He turned and walked down that hospital corridor, Sienna's heels clicking beside him, and I watched my son disappear from my life. I heard the elevator ding, heard the doors slide closed, and felt something fundamental crack inside my chest. Behind me, through the window of Lily's hospital room, I could see my granddaughter sleeping. The bandages around her eyes were still stark white, though they'd be removed tomorrow. Her dark curls spread across the thin hospital pillow, and her small hands were curled into fists like she was trying to hold on to something in her sleep. I thought about the first time I'd held her, just 3 years ago in this same hospital. Rachel had been exhausted but glowing, and Damien had looked at his newborn daughter with such wonder. She's perfect, he'd whispered. She's absolutely perfect. What had changed? When had perfect become too difficult? When had unconditional love become conditional on convenience? Sarah Martinez, one of the pediatric nurses who'd been caring for Lily all week, approached me with gentle concern on her face. She was in her mid-40s, a mother of 3 herself, and she'd been nothing but kind during this nightmare. "Dorothy," she said softly. "I saw Damien leave. Is he coming back?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Sarah's face fell, and I saw genuine sadness there. She'd been watching this drama unfold all week, probably hoping like I had that Damien would step up, that he'd remember he was a father and act like one. "I'm so sorry," she said. I really thought, well, I hoped he'd change his mind. "So did I managed to say. "What are you going to do?" Sarah squeezed my shoulder. "You won't be alone. The Center for the Blind has resources, early intervention programs, mobility training, counseling. And the hospital's social worker, Carmen, can help you navigate the financial assistance programs. There's help available." I nodded, grateful but overwhelmed. Resources and programs were good, but they didn't change the basic reality. I was 70 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment on $1,400 a month, about to become the primary caregiver for a newly blind 3-year-old who'd already lost so much. "When will Dr. Reeves remove the bandages?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning at 9. She's going to do it slowly, in stages, to help Lily adjust to the reality that her vision isn't coming back." I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, my granddaughter would wake up to permanent darkness. And I would have to be the one to explain that Daddy wasn't coming back either. That night, I slept in the chair beside Lily's bed. The nurses offered to set up a cot in the family room, but I couldn't leave her. I kept thinking about what Damien had said, that she'd be better off in a facility, that I was too old and poor to give her what she needed. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being selfish, choosing to keep her with me when I couldn't provide the kind of life she deserved. But the alternative, sending this little girl to an institution where she'd be one of dozens of children, where she'd grow up without family, without someone who loved her unconditionally, that seemed infinitely worse. Around midnight, Lily stirred and whimpered in her sleep. I reached over and took her small hand, and she immediately settled, her fingers curling around mine. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered. "Grandma's here." At 3 a.m., I pulled out my phone and called my sister, Margaret, in Boston. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Dorothy? What's wrong?" "It's 3 in the morning. Damien left," I said, and then the tears finally came. "He signed away his rights and left. He's moving to Portland with his mistress, and he's never coming back." "Oh, Margaret breathed. "Oh my God. What are you going to do?" "I'm taking her. I'm going to raise Lily." There was a long pause. Then, carefully, Margaret said, "Honey, are you sure? You're not young anymore, and a blind child is going to need so much care. Have you really thought this through?" "I don't have a choice, Marge. If I don't take her, she goes into the system. She goes to strangers who don't love her. I can't let that happen." "But you're living on Social Security. How are you going to afford everything she'll need?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'll figure it out. I have to." Margaret sighed, and I could picture her sitting up in bed, rubbing her face the way she always did when she was trying to solve a problem. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. I can send you $500 a month to help. It's not much, but it's something. And I'll come visit next month, help you get the apartment set up for her." "Marge, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. She's my great niece, and you're my sister. We're family, and family doesn't abandon each other. Unlike some people." The bitterness in her voice matched my own feelings. Margaret had never particularly liked Damien, always said there was something cold about him. I defended him for years, insisted she was being unfair. Now I wished I'd listened to her. We talked for another hour, Margaret helping me think through the practical realities of what I was taking on. By the time we hung up, I had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't much, but it was something to hold on to. The next morning, Dr. Lydia Reeves came to remove Lily's bandages. She was a kind woman in her 50s, an ophthalmologist who specialized in pediatric cases. She'd been the one to deliver the devastating news that Lily's Labor's congenital amaurosis had progressed too far for any current treatments to help. "Where's Daddy?" Lily asked as Dr. Reeves began carefully unwrapping the bandages. "I want Daddy." I took her hand, my heart breaking. "Daddy had to go away for work, sweetheart. But Grandma is right here. When is he coming back?" I looked at Dr. Reeves, who gave me an encouraging nod. "We discussed this yesterday, how important it was to be truthful with Lily even when the truth was painful." "He's not coming back, honey," I said gently. "But you have me, and I love you so, so much." Lily's face crumpled, and even before the bandages were fully off, tears were sliding down her cheeks. "I want Daddy. I want Mommy. I want to see." "I know, baby. I know." I gathered her into my arms as Dr. Reeves finished removing the bandages. "It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry." And she did cry. She sobbed for her mother, for her father, for her lost vision. She cried until she exhausted herself, and then she fell asleep against my chest, her tears soaking through my shirt. Dr. Reeves looked at me with professional sympathy. "This is going to be a long journey, Dorothy. The physical adjustment to blindness is challenging enough for a 3-year-old, but combined with the emotional trauma of losing both parents, she's going to need consistent therapy, probably for years." "I know," I said, though I didn't really know. I couldn't fully comprehend what we were facing. "The Center for the Blind has an early intervention program starting next month. I've already put in a referral. They'll work with Lily on orientation and mobility, sensory development, all the foundational skills she'll need. And Dr. Patricia Owens, one of the best child psychologists in the state, has agreed to see Lily twice a week." "How much does all this cost?" I asked, dreading the answer. "The early intervention program is state-funded through age 5. After that, there are scholarships and assistance programs. Dr. Owens is sliding scale, you'll pay what you can afford. We'll make it work, Dorothy. We'll help you." I nodded, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers while still reeling from my son's cruelty. 3 weeks later, I signed the guardianship papers at the office of Richard Pemberton, Damien's lawyer. Damien wasn't there, of course. He'd signed his portion of the documents remotely from Portland and had them notarized. He couldn't even be bothered to come back for one final legal proceeding. Richard, a balding man in his 60s with apologetic eyes, slid the papers across his mahogany desk. "Mrs. Patterson, once you sign these, you become Lily's legal guardian with all parental rights and responsibilities. Damien has voluntarily terminated his parental rights. There will be no custody disputes, no child support obligations, no legal connection between him and his daughter. Do you understand?" "I understand," I said, picking up the pen. "You also understand that you're assuming full financial responsibility for a special needs child? That there will be no financial support from Damien?" "Yes." "And you're aware of the long-term implications? This isn't temporary custody, this is permanent guardianship until Lily reaches 18. "Mr. Pemberton," I said, looking him in the eye, "I understand everything. My son has chosen to abandon his daughter. I'm choosing to be her family. Let's just sign the papers." He nodded and pushed them toward me. I signed my name on 6 different documents, each signature feeling like a promise to Lily and an indictment of Damien. When it was done, Richard closed the folder and said quietly, "For what it's worth, Mrs. Patterson, I think you're doing a very brave thing. Lily is lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her," I said, and meant it. The apartment I'd lived in for 15 years suddenly needed to transform into a child's home. My quiet, orderly retirement life disappeared overnight. I converted my small office into Lily's bedroom, painting it a soft lavender and installing textured wallpaper that she could feel. I covered the sharp corners of furniture with foam padding. I labeled everything in Braille, even though Lily wouldn't learn to read it for years. I wanted her to grow up knowing that her world could be accessible. My friend Pauline from church organized a donation drive, and suddenly my apartment was filled with toys designed for blind children, textured books, musical instruments, talking dolls. The congregation took up a collection that paid for 3 months of groceries. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, started bringing over dinners twice a week. The kindness of my community stood in sharp contrast to my son's abandonment. The first months were impossibly hard. Lily had nightmares every single night, waking up screaming for her mother, for her father, for the light she couldn't find anymore. I'd sit with her in the darkness, holding her, singing to her, promising her that everything would be okay even though I had no idea if that was true. She had to learn everything differently now. How to dress herself without seeing. How to navigate rooms using her hands and ears. How to trust that the world was still there even though she couldn't see it. And through it all, she asked about Damien. When is Daddy coming to visit? Why doesn't Daddy call? Doesn't Daddy love me anymore? Each question was a knife to my heart because the answer was the same. Daddy had chosen his new life over her. But how do you tell a 3-year-old that her father doesn't want her? 6 months after moving in with me, during one of Lily's occupational therapy sessions at the Seattle Center for the Blind, something extraordinary happened. We were in the building's main hall, waiting for her session to begin, when the sound of a piano drifted from one of the practice rooms. Someone was playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the notes cascading through the air like water. I watched as Lily's entire body went still. Her head tilted to the side, and her sightless eyes seemed to focus on something internal. Her breathing changed, becoming deeper, more measured. Her small hands, which had been fidgeting with her textured toy, stopped moving entirely. "Grandma," she whispered, "what is that?" "That's a piano, sweetheart. Someone is playing music. It's beautiful." Her voice was filled with wonder, the first time I'd heard that emotion from her since losing her sight. "It sounds like raindrops and moonlight and birds singing all together." I looked at my granddaughter in surprise. That was a sophisticated description for a 3-year-old. "Would you like to see the piano?" I asked, then corrected myself. "I mean, would you like to touch it?" "Yes. Please, please, Grandma." I spoke to the receptionist, who smiled and led us to the music therapy room. There, sitting at an old Yamaha upright piano, was an elderly Chinese man in his 70s with silver hair and kind eyes. He was the source of the beautiful music we'd heard. "Hello," he said warmly. "I'm James Chen. Are you here for music therapy?" "No, but my granddaughter heard you playing and wanted to feel the piano." "Of course." He stood up and gestured to the bench. "Come, little one. What's your name?" "Lily," she said shyly. "Beautiful name for a beautiful girl. Come sit with me, Lily." I lifted her onto the bench beside him, and watched as she reached out tentatively, her fingers finding the smooth white keys. The moment she touched them, her face transformed. She pressed down on middle C, and when the note rang out, pure and clear, she gasped with delight. "It makes sound," she exclaimed. "When I touch it, it makes sound." "That's right," James said gently. "Each key makes a different sound. Would you like to try more?" For the next 20 minutes, I watched as James patiently showed Lily where to place her small hands, how to press the keys with different amounts of pressure, how to create simple melodies. And Lily was transfixed. For the first time since losing her sight, she wasn't frustrated or scared or sad. She was joyful. "Mrs. Patterson," James said quietly as Lily experimented with the keys, "may I speak with you privately for a moment?" We stepped to the corner of the room while Lily continued to play, creating random notes that somehow formed pleasant patterns. "Your granddaughter has something very special," James said, his eyes serious. "The way she's listening to the sounds, the way her fingers are already finding patterns, the way she's processing the relationship between touch and sound. I taught piano for 40 years at Juilliard before I retired. I've worked with hundreds of students. What I'm seeing right now? It's extraordinary." "Really?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "You're not just being kind?" "I'm being truthful. Lily has a natural gift for music. Her blindness, in some ways, might actually enhance her ability to focus on sound. She's not distracted by visual input, all her attention is on the auditory experience. If she receives proper training, I believe she could be truly remarkable. Would you be willing to teach her? I asked. I can't pay much, but, he held up a hand, stopping me. Mrs. Patterson, I volunteer here 3 days a week because I believe music has the power to heal and transform. It would be my honor to work with Lily. No charge. Consider it my gift to a child who clearly needs music in her life. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I think I do, he said gently. I can see in your face that you've been through something difficult. Lily, too. Music can be a refuge when the world is cruel. And so began Lily's journey with piano. James came to our apartment twice a week, bringing a portable keyboard until I could save enough for a used upright piano. He was patient, creative, and absolutely convinced of Lily's potential. At 4 years old, Lily could play simple melodies by ear. At 5, she was working through beginner classical pieces. At 6, James introduced her to a teacher he knew at the prestigious Northwest Conservatory, Elena Volkov, a former concert pianist who specialized in teaching gifted children. James tells me your granddaughter is special, Elena said when we met her at the conservatory's gleaming facilities in downtown Seattle. She was a formidable woman in her 60s, Russian-born, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Let me hear her play. Lily was nervous, her small hands trembling as she approached the conservatory's grand piano. But the moment her fingers touched the keys and she began to play Mozart's sonata in C major, the nervousness disappeared. She was home. Elena listened with her eyes closed. When Lily finished, Elena opened her eyes and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Mrs. Patterson, I have taught piano for 38 years. I have worked with child prodigies, competition winners, students who have gone on to perform at Carnegie Hall. Your granddaughter, at 6 years old, has something I rarely see. She doesn't just play the notes, she understands the music. She feels it. She becomes it. What does that mean? I asked. It means I will teach her. It means she has the potential to be truly great. But it also means she will need to work harder than any other student I have. The competition circuit for young pianists is brutal. If Lily wants to succeed, she will need to practice 4 hours a day, compete regularly, and dedicate herself completely to her art. Are you prepared for that? Is she? I looked at Lily, who was running her hands over the grand piano's keys with reverence. Are you willing to work hard, sweetheart? I asked her. Yes, Grandma, she said immediately. I want to play piano forever and ever. Elena smiled for the first time. Then we begin next week. The years that followed were a blur of lessons, practice sessions, and competitions. Elena drove Lily relentlessly, but with compassion. She understood that music was more than just notes on a page. For Lily, it was her way of seeing the world. At 7, Lily won her first regional competition, playing Debussy's Clair de Lune, with such emotional depth that the judges sat in stunned silence before giving her a standing ovation. At 8, she placed third in the National Youth Piano Masters competition. At 9, she won the prestigious Northwest Young Artist Award. At 10, she was invited to perform with the Seattle Symphony Orchestra. And through it all, through every competition and performance and triumph, Damien was nowhere to be found. He never called. Never wrote. Never acknowledged his daughter's existence. He'd made his choice, and he'd stuck with it. I stopped trying to follow his life. I didn't want to know about his new children with Sienna, his successful law career in Portland, his comfortable life that had no room for the daughter he'd abandoned. But as Lily grew older and her talent became more recognized, I started to wonder, did he know? Did he see the articles in music magazines about the blind piano prodigy? Did he read the features in the Seattle Times about the remarkable young pianist who was defying every expectation? Did he feel anything when he saw her name, or had he trained himself to feel nothing at all? I tried not to care. I tried to focus on Lily, on the miracle of watching this child, this abandoned, blind little girl, blossom into an artist who could move audiences to tears with her music. But late at night, when Lily was asleep and I sat alone in our small apartment, I couldn't help but feel the anger burning in my chest. Damien had thrown away something precious, and he didn't even know it. He'd chosen comfort over his daughter, and in doing so, he'd missed watching her become extraordinary. Part of me hoped he'd never find out. That he'd live his whole life never knowing what he'd lost. But another part of me, a darker, angrier part, wanted him to know exactly what he'd thrown away. I wanted him to see what Lily had become despite his abandonment. I wanted him to understand the magnitude of his betrayal. I just had no idea that I'd get my chance sooner than I thought. Because when Lily was 15 years old, everything changed. That's when she won the International Classical Piano Competition in Vienna, first place, beating out 300 competitors from 47 countries. That's when she was offered a recording contract with Deutsche Grammophon, one of the most prestigious classical music labels in the world. That's when the prize money totaled $4.5 million, split between cash awards, performance contracts, and recording deals. And that's when, 12 years after walking out of that hospital, Damien's lawyer called. The apartment I'd called home for 15 years had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. What started as a quiet retirement sanctuary had become a music studio, practice space, and headquarters for managing a child prodigy's rapidly expanding career. The old upright piano I'd bought for $300 from a church sale now sat against the living room wall, its keys worn smooth from Lily's countless hours of practice. Sheet music covered every available surface, the coffee table, the kitchen counter, even stacked in neat piles along the hallway. The walls that once held my simple landscape paintings now displayed framed certificates, competition awards, and photographs of Lily performing on stages across the Pacific Northwest. But despite the accolades accumulating on our walls, despite the growing recognition of Lily's extraordinary gift, we were still living on the financial edge. My Social Security check of $1,400 a month, combined with Margaret's faithful $500 monthly contribution, barely covered our basic expenses. The sliding scale therapy sessions, the subsidized early intervention programs, the donated instruments and lessons, all of it was charity that I was grateful for, but that also reminded me daily of how precarious our situation was. Elena Volkov had been true to her word about teaching Lily without charging her standard rates, but even at her family rate of $80 per lesson, twice a week, we were stretching every dollar until it screamed. I'd started taking in sewing work, mending clothes for neighbors and altering dresses for the women at church. It wasn't much, maybe $200 a month, but every little bit helped. Lily was 7 years old now, and the transformation from the traumatized 3-year-old who'd lost everything to this confident, joyful child was nothing short of miraculous. Music had given her something I couldn't, a sense of purpose, a way to connect with the world, a language that transcended her blindness. "Grandma, listen to this part." Lily called from the piano, her fingers flying over the keys as she worked through a particularly challenging passage from Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Elena taught me a new fingering technique that makes it so much smoother. I came out of the kitchen, dish towel still in my hands, and watched my granddaughter play. Her face was intense with concentration, her body swaying slightly with the music's rhythm. She'd learned to listen not just with her ears but with her entire being, feeling the vibrations through the piano bench, sensing the way each note connected to create something larger than itself. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," I said when she finished. "You've really mastered that section." She beamed, her face turning toward the sound of my voice even though she couldn't see me. "Elena says I'm ready to enter the Pacific Northwest Youth Competition next month. It's a really big deal, Grandma. First place gets $2,000 and a performance with the Tacoma Symphony." My heart sank even as I maintained my encouraging smile. The Pacific Northwest Youth Competition required a $150 entry fee, plus we'd need to pay for travel to Tacoma, a hotel for 2 nights, and a formal dress for Lily to wear on stage. We were looking at least $500 in expenses for a competition we had no guarantee she'd win. "That's wonderful, honey," I said carefully. "Let me talk to Elena about it, okay?" "Okay." She turned back to the piano and began practicing again, attacking a complex Chopin etude with the kind of determination that both amazed and worried me. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at my small kitchen table and spread out our bills. Rent, $850. Utilities, $120. Groceries, $400. Lily's lessons, $640 per month. Her weekly orientation and mobility sessions, $100. The specialized Braille learning materials she needed for school, $75. The list went on, and at the bottom of my calculations, I was always $200 to $300 short, juggling which bills to pay late and which to prioritize. The Pacific Northwest Youth Competition entry form sat on top of the pile, taunting me. This could be Lily's breakthrough opportunity. Elena had said that scouts from major music programs would be there, that winning could open doors for scholarships and more advanced training. But $500 might as well have been $5,000 for all the hope I had of coming up with it. I picked up the phone and called Margaret. It's almost midnight there, my sister said, her voice groggy. Is everything okay? I need to ask you something, and I hate doing it. What's wrong? I explained the situation, the competition, the costs, the opportunity it represented. How much do you need? Margaret asked, and I heard her already calculating in her head. $500. I know you're already sending me money every month, and I know you're on a fixed income too, but Marge, this could be huge for Lily. Elena says, I'll send you $600, Margaret interrupted. That gives you a little cushion for unexpected expenses. Check should arrive by Thursday. Marge, I can't ask you to, you're not asking. I'm offering. Lily is special. We both know it. If she needs opportunities to shine, we find a way to make them happen. That's what family does. I wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling. What did I do to deserve a sister like you? You're raising an abandoned child at 70 years old while her waste-of-space father builds a new life in Portland. I think you've earned a little support. Now go to bed. You sound exhausted. The check arrived on Wednesday, and by Friday, we were registered for the competition. Elena helped me find a consignment shop in Bellingham where we bought a beautiful navy blue dress for Lily, formal enough for stage performances, but practical enough to wear again. It cost $65, and I'd never spent so much on a single piece of clothing for either of us, but when Lily tried it on and felt the soft fabric, her face lit up with such joy that I knew it was worth every penny. The Pacific Northwest Youth Competition took place at the Pantages Theater in Tacoma on a rainy Saturday in October. The theater was grand and old-fashioned, with red velvet seats and ornate gold trim. Lily couldn't see any of it, but she could feel the history in the space, hear the way sound moved differently in the large auditorium. There are 17 competitors in your age category, Elena said as we waited backstage. Most of them have been training at expensive private academies since they were 3 years old. Many of them have parents who are professional musicians. You're going to be the only blind competitor. Does that matter? Lily asked, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Not to your playing, Elena said. But it might matter to the judges. Some people see blindness as a disability that limits potential. They might unconsciously mark you down, expecting less from you. That's not fair, I said, anger flashing through me. No, it's not, Elena agreed. But it's reality. Lily needs to be not just good, she needs to be undeniably better than everyone else. She needs to play so beautifully that the judges have no choice but to give her first place. Lily's jaw set in determination. Then that's what I'll do. We waited through 13 other performances. Some were technically proficient but emotionally cold. Others were passionate but sloppy. A few were genuinely excellent, and I felt my anxiety growing with each one. These children were good, really good. Could Lily really compete with students who had advantages she'd never had? Lily Morrison, the stage manager, called. You're up next. Elena guided Lily to the side of the stage, where a volunteer would walk her to the piano bench. I squeezed her hand. I love you, sweetheart. Just play from your heart. I love you too, Grandma. I watched from the wings as Lily walked onto that stage, one hand on the volunteer's arm, moving with the careful confidence that years of mobility training had given her. The audience was silent as she settled onto the bench and adjusted her position. She sat for a moment with her hands in her lap, her face tilted slightly upward, and I knew she was listening to the space, feeling the energy of the room. Then she placed her hands on the keys and began to play Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. From the first note, I knew something special was happening. Lily didn't just play the piece, she inhabited it. Her body swayed with the dramatic crescendos, her face reflecting every emotional shift in the music. The thundering bass notes shook the theater, and the delicate melodic passages floated through the air like whispers of beauty in the darkness. I looked out at the audience and saw faces transfixed. Some people had tears running down their cheeks. Others sat with their mouths slightly open, completely absorbed in what they were hearing. This 7-year-old blind girl was making them feel something profound, and they couldn't look away. When she finished, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the entire theater erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering, and I saw several of the judges frantically marking their scoring sheets, their faces showing clear emotion. Elena grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in with excitement. "Dorothy, did you hear that? Did you hear what she just did?" "I heard it," I managed to say through my tears. Everyone heard it. Lily took her bow, her face glowing with joy, and made her way off stage with the volunteers' help. The moment she was in the wings, I grabbed her into a hug. "You were magnificent. Absolutely magnificent." "Did I do okay, Grandma?" she asked, and I heard the vulnerability beneath the question. She'd poured everything she had into that performance, and she needed to know it was enough. "Better than okay, sweetheart. You were perfect." When they announced the results 2 hours later, Lily Morrison won first place in the 7 to 9 age category. She also won the Special Judges Prize for Most Outstanding Performance of the entire competition, across all age groups. The $2,000 prize money felt like a fortune. It meant I could pay rent 2 months in advance, catch up on the electric bill, buy Lily new shoes. The practical necessities that I'd been worrying about suddenly seemed manageable. But more important than the money were the opportunities that followed. A talent scout from the Berklee School of Music approached us after the ceremony, giving me her card and saying they'd be interested in Lily for their summer intensive program when she was a bit older. A local news station asked to do a feature story on the blind piano prodigy who's taking the classical music world by storm. Elena was practically vibrating with excitement as we packed up to leave. "This is just the beginning, Dorothy. Mark my words, Lily is going to do extraordinary things." The news feature aired 2 weeks later on Seattle's King 5. It was a 5-minute segment during the evening news, showing Lily at the piano, talking about how music helped her see the world differently, discussing the challenges of learning to play without sight and the joy she found in performance. The response was overwhelming. The video went viral on social media, shared thousands of times. Donations started arriving at our apartment, $20 here, $50 there, people moved by Lily's story and wanting to help. A local music store donated a better piano, a beautiful kawaii upright that made our old one seem like a toy in comparison. The Seattle Center for the Blind set up a small scholarship fund in Lily's name to help cover her lessons and competition fees. For the first time since taking guardianship of Lily, I felt like we might actually make it. Like the constant financial stress might ease just enough to let me breathe. But success brought new pressures. Elena wanted Lily competing every month, building her reputation and experience. Each competition meant entry fees, travel costs, formal clothes, and time away from school. I started keeping a detailed calendar, mapping out competitions across the state, calculating costs, juggling our budget to make it all work. Lily thrived on the challenge. At 8 years old, she was practicing 4 to 5 hours a day, learning pieces that most teenagers would find daunting. She placed third in the National Youth Piano Masters competition, competing against students from across the country. She won the Seattle Young Artist Award. She performed as a featured soloist with the Spokane Symphony Orchestra. With each success, the prizes grew larger. $1,000 here, $1,500 there. I opened a savings account for Lily's future, determined that this money would go toward her education and career, not just day-to-day survival. But the most significant change was in Lily herself. The sad, frightened 3-year-old who'd cried for her father every night had become a confident, determined young artist who knew her worth. She still asked about Damien occasionally. "Do you think my father knows I play piano? Would he be proud of me?" And each question broke my heart. But the questions came less frequently as the years passed, and eventually, they stopped altogether. By the time Lily was 10 years old, she'd won enough competitions and prizes that we'd saved $23,000. It was more money than I'd ever had in my life, carefully invested in a college fund that Elena helped me set up. We moved to a bigger 2-bedroom apartment in a better school district, one with enough space for Lily to practice without disturbing neighbors. I bought a used car so we didn't have to depend on buses to get to lessons and competitions. "You know what this means," Elena said during one of our monthly planning meetings. "Lily is at the level where she needs to start competing internationally. There are major youth competitions in Europe, Paris, Vienna, Moscow. These are the competitions that can really launch a career." "Europe?" I said faintly. "Elena, I don't even have a passport." "Then get one. Dorothy, Lily has the talent to compete on the world stage. She's surpassed every other student her age in this region. If she wants to continue growing, she needs to test herself against the best young pianists in the world." The thought terrified me. International travel with a blind 10-year-old, navigating foreign cities, competition venues, the logistics alone seemed impossible. But when I mentioned it to Lily, her face lit up with such excitement that I knew I couldn't say no. "Really, Grandma? We could go to Europe? Where musicians like Mozart and Beethoven lived?" "Maybe," I said carefully. "If we can figure out how to afford it." The International Youth Classical Competition in Paris had an entry fee of $400, and getting both of us there and back would cost at least $3,000. It was a huge financial risk, but Elena was convinced it was worth it. "This competition is where careers are made," she insisted. "The judges are former concert pianists, representatives from major music schools, talent scouts from recording labels. If Lily does well there, it could change everything." We dipped into the savings account for the first time, taking $4,000 to cover the Paris competition. I felt physically ill watching that number decrease, but Elena's confidence was contagious, and Lily's determination was absolute. "I'm going to win, Grandma," Lily said as we packed for the trip. "I'm going to play so beautifully that everyone will remember my name." Paris in spring was like something from a dream. The competition took place at the Salle Quartet, a historic concert hall in the 17th arrondissement. Over 200 young pianists from 40 countries had entered, and the competition spanned 5 days of preliminary rounds, semi-finals, and finals. Lily made it through the preliminary round easily. The semi-finals were more challenging. She was up against students from prestigious conservatories in Moscow, Tokyo, and Berlin. But she played Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor with such passion and technical brilliance that she advanced to the finals with one of the highest scores. The final round required each competitor to perform a full 30-minute recital, showcasing 3 pieces from different periods of classical music. Lily chose Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 14, Moonlight Sonata, Debussy's Clair de Lune, and Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2. I sat in the audience, my hands clenched so tightly that my knuckles were white, watching my granddaughter walk onto that stage in front of an international audience of music critics, talent scouts, and hundreds of spectators. She was so small on that stage, just 10 years old, blind, navigating toward the piano with careful confidence. And then she began to play, and nothing else mattered. The Moonlight Sonata started softly, hauntingly, building slowly through the first movement's melancholy beauty. The second movement brought a brief respite of brightness before the third movement exploded into technical brilliance, flying fingers, dramatic crescendos, the kind of performance that made you forget to breathe. Without pause, she transitioned into Debussy's Clair de Lune, and the mood shifted completely. Now the music was ethereal, dreamlike, each note floating through the concert hall like moonlight on water. I saw people in the audience closing their eyes, swaying gently, lost in the beauty of what they were hearing. The Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody was her finale, wild, passionate, technically demanding, a showpiece designed to demonstrate absolute mastery of the instrument. Lily attacked it fearlessly, her small hands racing across the keys, her body moving with the music's energy, and when she played the final triumphant chords, the entire audience exploded into applause before she'd even lifted her hands from the keys. Standing ovation. Cheers. Whistles. I saw judges marking their sheets with visible enthusiasm. I saw talent scouts leaning forward in their seats, talking urgently to each other. Lily won second place in the International Youth Classical Competition in Paris. She was 10 years old, the youngest finalist in the competition's history, and the only blind competitor to ever reach the final round. The prize money was $15,000. But more importantly, she was offered a full scholarship to the prestigious Meadowbrook Music Academy in Vermont, one of the top preparatory music schools in the United States. Her performance was written about in classical music magazines across Europe. A small recording label in Germany offered her a contract to record an album of classical piano pieces. We flew home from Paris with our lives fundamentally changed. That $15,000 prize money went straight back into the savings account, and suddenly we had a cushion, a safety net, room to breathe. Over the next 5 years, Lily's career continued its upward trajectory. At 11, she performed at Carnegie Hall as part of a young artists' showcase. At 12, she won the National Youth Piano Masters competition, finally taking first place. At 13, she released her first album, Visions in Sound, which reached number 3 on the classical music charts. At 14, she was invited to perform at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And with each success, the prize money grew. $5,000 here, $10,000 there, $20,000 for a major international competition. By Lily's 15th birthday, our savings account had grown to $127,000, money that would pay for college, for graduate school, for whatever future Lily wanted to build. Elena was talking about Juilliard, about Lily auditioning for the most prestigious music program in the country. She has the talent, Elena insisted. She absolutely has the talent. They'd be lucky to have her. But the competition that would change everything was the International Classical Piano Competition in Vienna, the Olympics of youth piano competitions, held only once every 3 years. The prize for the under-18 category was substantial, $50,000 cash, a recording contract with Deutsche Grammophon, one of the most prestigious classical music labels in the world, and a guaranteed performance tour of 20 major cities across Europe and North America. The total value of the prize package was estimated at $4.5 million when you factored in the recording contract, performance fees, and long-term career opportunities. This is it, Elena said when we got the invitation for Lily to compete. This is the competition that can make her a household name in the classical music world. If she wins this, she'll have her pick of music schools, performance opportunities, everything. The entry fee was $750, and getting both of us to Vienna for the 2-week competition would cost about $6,000. But we had the money now. For the first time, I didn't have to agonize over whether we could afford it. Lily was 15 years old, and she'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. 12 years since Damien had walked out of that hospital, 12 years since he'd decided his daughter was too much trouble, too expensive, too inconvenient for his perfect life. 12 years of struggle, of sacrifice, of watching this extraordinary child bloom despite being abandoned by the person who should have loved her most. "I'm ready, Grandma," Lily said the night before we left for Vienna. "I'm ready to show the world what I can do." "I know you are, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tight. "I've always known." The Vienna competition lasted 2 weeks in September. 347 pianists from 47 countries competed in the under-18 category alone. The preliminary rounds were grueling. Each pianist performed for 20 minutes in front of a panel of international judges, and only 30 advanced to the semifinals. Lily made it through the preliminaries ranked 7th overall. The semifinals cut the field to 10 finalists, and Lily was ranked 3rd after performing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 with the Vienna Philharmonic. The finals were held at the Musikverein, Vienna's most prestigious concert hall, famous for its acoustics and history. Each finalist performed a 1-hour recital of their choice, showcasing their technical ability, emotional depth, and artistic interpretation. Lily chose a program that represented her journey: Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the first piece she'd ever mastered; Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the piece that had won her the Paris competition; Debussy's Pour le Piano, a technically demanding impressionist work; and her closing piece, Ravel's Gaspard de la Nuit, considered one of the most difficult pieces in the classical piano repertoire. I sat in the audience at the Musikverein, in one of the most beautiful concert halls in the world, watching my 15-year-old granddaughter walk onto the stage. She wore a floor-length emerald green dress that Elena had helped us find, and her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. She looked confident, poised, mature beyond her years. The piano on stage was a Bosendorfer Imperial Grand, one of the finest instruments in the world. Lily settled onto the bench, took a moment to center herself, and began to play. What happened next was nothing short of magical. Lily didn't just perform those pieces, she transcended them. Every note was perfect, every phrase shaped with intention, every emotional moment communicated with stunning clarity. The Beethoven was melancholy and beautiful. The Chopin was passionate and virtuosic. The Debussy shimmered with color and light. And the Ravel, the impossibly difficult Ravel, she played it like she was born to play it, conquering every technical challenge while maintaining the emotional depth that made the piece more than just a showpiece. When she finished, the silence lasted for 3 full seconds. Then the audience erupted. People were on their feet, crying, cheering, applauding so loudly that the sound seemed to shake the walls. I saw judges wiping tears from their eyes. I saw professional musicians in the audience looking stunned. Lily stood and took her bow, and I'd never seen her look so happy, so fulfilled, so absolutely certain of who she was and what she was meant to do. 3 hours later, they announced the results. First place, Lily Aurora Morrison, United States. The prize package included $50,000 cash, the Deutsche Grammophon recording contract, and the international performance tour. When you calculated the long-term value of the recording contract and performance fees over the next 2 years, the total value was $4.5 million. Lily had done it. She'd beaten out 346 other competitors from across the world. She'd proven that blindness wasn't a limitation, it was just a different way of experiencing music. She'd shown that an abandoned child raised by her 70-year-old grandmother in a small apartment in Crescent Falls, Washington, could compete with students from the most prestigious music academies in the world. And she'd won. The celebration that night was overwhelming. Reporters wanted interviews. Talent scouts wanted meetings. Other competitors came to congratulate her and ask about her technique. Elena was crying with pride, hugging both of us and saying, "I knew it. I always knew she could do this." We flew home to Seattle a week later, and our lives had fundamentally changed. The $50,000 was deposited into Lily's college fund, bringing the total to $177,000. The recording contract meant stable income for the next several years. The performance tour meant Lily's name would become known across the classical music world. But more than the money or the opportunities, what mattered was what Lily had proven, to herself, to me, to everyone who doubted what a blind child could accomplish. She'd shown that she wasn't the abandoned, unwanted daughter that Damien had thrown away. She was Lily Morrison, internationally recognized piano prodigy, winner of one of the most prestigious competitions in classical music, an artist who would be remembered. We returned home to dozens of messages and emails. Congratulations from friends, interview requests from music magazines, inquiries from concert promoters. And one message that made my blood run cold. A voicemail from Mitchell Richardson, attorney at law, representing Damien Morrison. He wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss family matters relating to Lily's recent success and Mr. Morrison's renewed interest in establishing a relationship with his daughter. I listened to that message 3 times, my hands shaking. Damien had been gone for 12 years. 12 years without a phone call, a birthday card, a single acknowledgement that Lily existed. And now that she'd won $4.5 million in prizes and contracts, now that she was famous, now that she was valuable, now he wanted to be her father again. I saved the message and sat down at the kitchen table, fury burning through every cell in my body. He was about to learn a very painful lesson about what happens when you abandon your child and then try to come back when it's profitable. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Lily practicing in the living room even though it was past midnight. She was still riding the high of her Vienna victory, working through a new piece Elena had assigned her, completely unaware of the voicemail that was waiting to destroy her peace. Mitchell Richardson, attorney at law, representing Damian Morrison. The words echoed in my head like a curse. After 12 years of silence, 12 years of absence, 12 years of pretending his daughter didn't exist, Damian wanted back in. And he'd send a lawyer to negotiate his return, like this was a business transaction rather than a family matter. I thought about that day in the hospital when he'd walked away. The coldness in his eyes when he'd said, "She needs more than I can give her, Mom." The way Sienna had stood there, impatient and dismissive, treating a 3-year-old blind girl like an inconvenient obstacle to their perfect life. How many nights had Lily cried for her father? How many times had she asked if Daddy would come back, if he still loved her, if she'd done something wrong to make him leave? How many birthdays and Christmases and competitions had passed with no word from him, no acknowledgement, no sign that he even remembered she existed? And now that she was valuable, now that she'd won millions in prizes and recording contracts, now he wanted to establish a relationship. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't just anger, it was a cold, calculating fury that demanded action, that required justice. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went to my small office. I'd kept meticulous records over the years, receipts for Lily's care, medical expenses, therapy costs, competition fees, travel expenses, everything I'd paid out of pocket while Damian lived his comfortable life in Portland. I documented it partly out of necessity for tax purposes, partly because some instinct told me I might need proof someday of everything Lily had cost me. Now I was grateful for that instinct. I spent the next 3 hours going through files and folders, pulling together a comprehensive picture of what the past 12 years had actually looked like. The hospital bills from those first months when Lily was adjusting to blindness. The mobility training fees. The specialized equipment, braille learning tools, adaptive technology, the countless things Lily needed that insurance didn't cover. The piano lessons, even at Elena's reduced rate. The competition entry fees, travel costs, formal dresses, sheet music, recordings for practice. Every dollar I'd spent while Damian had paid nothing, contributed nothing, acknowledged nothing. The total came to $87,340 over 12 years. And that didn't include the intangible costs, the sleepless nights, the emotional labor of raising a traumatized child, the sacrifice of my own retirement to dedicate every waking hour to Lily's care and development. But I needed more than just financial records. If Damian was coming back with a lawyer, I needed to understand what he actually wanted. Was this about rekindling a relationship with Lily? Or was this about the money? I suspected it was the latter, but I needed proof. The next morning, I called the one person I knew who could help me navigate this situation. My neighbor from 2 apartments down, Patricia Alvarez, was a retired family law attorney who'd moved to Seattle from Los Angeles 5 years ago. She'd become a friend over the years, often babysitting Lily when I had to run errands, attending her performances, celebrating her victories with us. "Dorothy, it's 7 a.m. on a Sunday," Patricia said when she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "This must be important." "Damian's lawyer called," I said without preamble. "After 12 years of nothing, he wants to establish a relationship now that Lily's won millions." The sleep disappeared from Patricia's voice immediately. "That son of a bitch. Okay, don't respond to the lawyer yet. Come over in an hour. Bring every document you have related to Lily's guardianship, Damian's termination of parental rights, and your financial records. We need to understand what he's actually after before we engage." Patricia's apartment was larger than mine, filled with law books and files from her decades of practice. She'd retired from active litigation but still consulted occasionally on difficult cases. She met me at the door with coffee already brewing and a legal pad ready for notes. "Talk me through the whole situation," she said, settling into her favorite armchair. Start from the beginning. I told her everything. The hospital scene 12 years ago, Damien's abandonment, the legal termination of his parental rights, the guardianship transfer, the years of struggle, and now Lily's success culminating in the Vienna victory. Patricia listened without interrupting, making notes on her legal pad. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. First, the good news, she finally said. Damien voluntarily terminated his parental rights 12 years ago. That's a permanent legal action. He can't simply decide he wants to be a father again because circumstances have changed. He has no legal claim to custody, no right to make decisions about Lily's life, and no automatic right to access her or her finances. Relief flooded through me. So he can't take her from me? No. You have full legal guardianship. But Dorothy, there's a reason he sent a lawyer instead of just calling you directly. They're preparing some kind of legal strategy. My guess? They're going to argue that the termination of rights should be reversed based on changed circumstances, specifically, that Lily's success demonstrates she no longer needs the intensive care that justified his original decision to give up his rights. That's ridiculous. Her success is because of 12 years of intensive care and support. I know that, and any reasonable judge would know that. But they might try to argue that Damien was a young, overwhelmed single father who made a difficult decision in a moment of crisis, and now that Lily is stable and successful, he wants to make amends and be part of her life. They'll paint it as a redemption story. Devoted father realizes his mistake and wants to reconnect with his successful daughter. It's not a redemption story. It's a money grab. Probably. But we need to prove that. We need to show that his interest began exactly when her financial success became public, not before. Do you know when he first found out about the Vienna competition? I thought about it. The competition results had been announced 2 weeks ago. There had been coverage in the Seattle Times, the Crescent Falls Gazette, and several classical music magazines. Lily's performance had gone viral on YouTube, with over 3 million views. It would have been almost impossible for Damien not to know about it if he'd been paying any attention to news from Washington. The Seattle Times article ran 10 days ago, I said. His lawyer called 5 days ago. So within a week of the news becoming public, he reached out. Patricia nodded grimly. That timing is damning, and we can use it. But we need to be strategic here. When you respond to the lawyer, we want to appear open to communication while actually gathering information about their true intentions. Let them think you're a naive old woman who might be intimidated by legal proceedings. That will make them show their hand more quickly. What do you think they actually want? Patricia set down her coffee cup and looked at me seriously. Best case scenario? Damien has genuine regret and wants to reconnect with Lily with no ulterior motives. But given the timing and the fact that he sent a lawyer first instead of reaching out personally, I think we're looking at one of two scenarios. Either he wants access to Lily's prize money and future earnings, possibly arguing that as her biological father, he deserves some financial compensation or role in managing her assets. Or he's planning to write a book or sell his story to media outlets. Father reunites with the blind piano prodigy he gave up for adoption, would be worth serious money in book deals and interviews. The cynicism in her voice matched my own suspicions. What do I do? You call the lawyer back and agree to meet. You bring me with you as your legal representative. And you do not, under any circumstances, let Damien anywhere near Lily until we understand what he's after and whether he poses any legal threat to your guardianship. Should I tell Lily that her father reached out? Patricia considered this carefully. Not yet. She's 15, old enough to understand, but she's also just experienced a major life achievement. She doesn't need the emotional complication of dealing with the father who abandoned her right now. Let's find out what Damien actually wants first. If it's genuine, we can facilitate a careful, monitored reconnection. If it's what I think it is, we shut it down before Lily ever has to know he tried to come back. I nodded, grateful for her clarity and protection. One more thing, Patricia said. I want you to document everything from this point forward. Every phone call, every meeting, every communication. Date, time, what was said, who was present. If this turns into a legal battle, documentation will be our strongest weapon. I called Mitchell Richardson back that afternoon, with Patricia sitting beside me, taking notes. Mr. Richardson, this is Dorothy Patterson returning your call about Damian Morrison. Mrs. Patterson, thank you for getting back to me. His voice was smooth, professional, the kind of voice that made you think of expensive suits and corner offices. I'm representing Mr. Morrison in what we hope will be a reconciliation with his daughter, Lily. He's been following her career with great pride and would very much like to re-establish contact. Following her career with great pride. The lie was so blatant it made my hands shake, but I kept my voice steady. That's very sudden, Mr. Richardson. Damian hasn't contacted Lily in 12 years. Why now? Mr. Morrison has always cared deeply for his daughter, Mrs. Patterson. However, the circumstances of her mother's death and his own emotional state at the time led him to make a difficult decision that he now regrets. Seeing Lily's success, seeing how she's overcome her disability to achieve such remarkable things, has inspired him to reach out and try to make amends. Every word was calculated, scripted. I could practically see him reading from prepared notes. I see. And what exactly does Damian hope to achieve by re-establishing contact? Initially, just an opportunity to speak with Lily, to apologize for his absence and express his pride in her accomplishments. Mr. Morrison understands that trust needs to be rebuilt, and he's prepared to take that process slowly and respectfully. And after that initial contact? There was a pause. Mr. Morrison hopes that, over time, they might develop a meaningful father-daughter relationship. He'd like to be involved in Lily's life going forward, to support her career and her future in whatever way is appropriate. Support her career. There it was, the first hint of financial interest wrapped in noble language. Mr. Richardson, I'm Lily's legal guardian. Damian voluntarily terminated his parental rights 12 years ago. What legal standing does he have to request contact? Another pause. Mrs. Patterson, while it's true that parental rights were terminated, Washington state law does allow for those terminations to be challenged and potentially reversed under certain circumstances. However, Mr. Morrison is not seeking to disrupt your guardianship at this time. He simply wants the opportunity to connect with his daughter as a private citizen, not as a legal parent. Not at this time. The phrase hung in the air like a threat. Patricia was writing furiously on her legal pad, underlining certain phrases. I'll need to consult with my own attorney before agreeing to any meetings, I said. And I'll need to speak with Lily about whether she even wants contact with the father who abandoned her. Of course, of course. Mr. Morrison completely understands. Perhaps we could schedule a preliminary meeting? Just you, me, and Mr. Morrison, to discuss how a potential reconciliation might work? No commitment, just a conversation. Where is Damian now? I asked. He's flown in from Portland specifically for this purpose. He's staying at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel downtown and will be available all week. He'd flown in. He was staying at a hotel that cost $400 a night. He'd come prepared for an extended negotiation. Let me talk to my attorney and to Lily, I said. I'll call you back within 48 hours. That would be excellent, Mrs. Patterson. Mr. Morrison is very much looking forward to the possibility of reconnecting with his remarkable daughter. After I hung up, Patricia looked at her notes with a grim expression. Support her career and her future in whatever way is appropriate, she read. Not seeking to disrupt your guardianship at this time. Dorothy, this man didn't come here to apologize and reconnect. He came here to negotiate access to Lily's money. What do we do? We meet with him. You, me, and Damian. No lawyers if he agrees, just a family conversation. We let him talk, let him reveal his intentions. And we record everything legally. Washington is a two-party consent state, so we'll inform him we're recording for your records. If he objects, that tells us something right there. And what if Lily finds out he's here? What if she wants to see him? Patricia's face softened. Then we let her make that choice. She's 15, nearly an adult. But we make sure she understands the timing of his interest, the suspicious circumstances, And we make sure she's protected emotionally and legally regardless of what happens. That evening, I sat Lily down after dinner. She was in a good mood, still euphoric from Vienna, talking excitedly about the recording session scheduled for next month with Deutsche Grammophon. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something serious," I said, and her face immediately became concerned. "Is something wrong, Grandma? Are you sick?" No, I'm fine. It's about your father." The change in her expression was immediate: confusion, then a flash of something that might have been hope, then careful neutrality. "What about him?" she asked quietly. "His lawyer called a few days ago. Damien wants to meet with us. He says he's been following your career and wants to reconnect." Lily was silent for a long moment. Her hands, usually so expressive and active, went completely still in her lap. "Why now?" she finally asked, and I heard the wariness in her voice. "He's had 12 years to contact me. Why does he suddenly want to meet after I win in Vienna?" My 15-year-old granddaughter, blind since age 3, had immediately identified the suspicious timing that would have escaped many adults. "I don't know, honey. That's what concerns me too. But I wanted to talk to you about it before making any decisions. Do you want to meet him?" She thought about it for a long time. I watched emotions play across her face: longing, anger, curiosity, fear. "Part of me does," she finally admitted. "Part of me wants to know why he left, wants to hear him say he's sorry, wants to believe that maybe he's changed and he actually cares about me now." "And the other part?" "The other part thinks it's really suspicious that he shows up right after I win $4.5 million. The other part remembers all the times I asked about him when I was little, all the birthdays he missed, all the competitions he wasn't there for. The other part doesn't trust him at all." "Those are both valid feelings, sweetheart. What do you think I should do, Grandma?" I took her hands in mine. "I think you should do whatever feels right to you. If you want to meet him, we'll arrange it carefully, with Patricia there to make sure everything stays appropriate. If you don't want to meet him, I'll tell his lawyer that you're not interested and handle it myself. Either way, I'm going to protect you. Can I think about it for a couple days?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." She nodded and stood up, then hesitated. "Grandma? Do you think he actually wants to be my father? Or do you think he just wants something from me?" The question broke my heart because I knew the answer, but I couldn't say it without influencing her decision. "I don't know, sweetheart. But we're going to find out before we let him anywhere near you." 2 days later, Lily made her decision. "I want to meet him," she said. "Not because I trust him, but because I need to know. I need to hear what he has to say, see if he's genuine or if this is about money. And if it's about money, I want to know that too. I want to know who my father really is." So Patricia arranged the meeting. Damien, Mitchell Richardson, Patricia, Lily, and myself, scheduled for the following Thursday at Patricia's office. Neutral ground, professional setting, legally documented. "I'm going to record the meeting with everyone's knowledge," Patricia explained to Richardson over the phone. "This is for our records and to protect all parties. If Mr. Morrison objects to being recorded, we'll consider that a sign that this meeting shouldn't happen." "That's perfectly fine," Richardson said smoothly. "Mr. Morrison has nothing to hide. He's simply a father trying to reconnect with his daughter." Thursday arrived too quickly. I helped Lily choose what to wear, a simple blue dress that made her look poised and mature. She was nervous, her hands trembling slightly as I braided her hair. "What if he's actually changed, Grandma? What if he really is sorry and wants to be my father?" "Then that would be a wonderful thing," I said, though I didn't believe it for a second. "And we'd figure out carefully how to make that work in a way that's healthy for you." "And what if he hasn't changed? What if this is about the money?" "Then we protect you and send him away, and you'll know the truth about who he is." We arrived at Patricia's office 15 minutes early. She had everything set up, a conference table with chairs, a recording device prominently displayed in the center, notepads and pens, water glasses. It looked professional, intimidating, perfect. "Remember, Patricia said quietly to both of us, "You don't have to answer any questions you're not comfortable with. If at any point this becomes too much, we end the meeting. And Lily, you are under no obligation to forgive him or accept his presence in your life just because he showed up. You get to make that choice based on what's best for you." At exactly 2 p.m., Mitchell Richardson arrived, followed by Damien. I hadn't seen my son in 12 years. He was 45 now, his dark hair starting to show gray at the temples. He'd gained a little weight, wore an expensive suit, looked successful and comfortable. He looked like a man whose life had gone exactly as planned, untroubled by the daughter he'd abandoned. When he saw Lily, something flickered across his face. Was it guilt? Regret? Or just calculation about how this meeting needed to go? Lily couldn't see him, but she could hear him enter, could sense the change in the room's energy. Her hand found mine under the table and gripped it tightly. "Lily," Damien said, his voice thick with emotion that might have been genuine or might have been performance. "You're so grown up. You're beautiful." Lily's face was carefully neutral. "Hello, Damien." Not Dad or Father. Damien. The formality of it was deliberate, a boundary established in a single word. We all sat down. Patricia started the recording and stated for the record who was present, the date and time, and that all parties were aware of and consented to the recording. "Mr. Morrison," Patricia began, "you've requested this meeting to reconnect with your daughter after 12 years of no contact. Could you explain what motivated you to reach out at this particular time?" Damien looked uncomfortable being questioned by Patricia rather than being allowed to direct the conversation, but he recovered quickly. "I've thought about Lily every day for the past 12 years, he said, looking at her even though she couldn't see him. "Walking away from her was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've regretted it ever since. But I was in such a dark place after Rachel died, and when Lily lost her sight, I panicked. I felt completely overwhelmed and inadequate. I made a terrible decision that I've been ashamed of ever since. If you've been thinking about her every day and regretting your decision, why didn't you reach out sooner?" Patricia asked. "Why wait 12 years? "Fear, mostly," Damien said. "Fear that she'd hate me. Fear that I'd disrupted her life with Dorothy beyond repair. Fear that reaching out would do more harm than good. But when I saw her performance from Vienna, when I watched her play with such incredible skill and grace, I realized she'd become an amazing person despite my absence. And I thought, maybe it's not too late. Maybe she'd give me a chance to explain, to apologize, to try to be part of her life." It was a good answer, well-rehearsed, hitting all the emotional notes that would make him seem sympathetic. Lily spoke for the first time since his greeting. "You watched my performance from Vienna?" "I did. I've watched all of them actually. Every competition video I could find online. Every interview. Every performance. I've been following your career for years, Lily. I'm so incredibly proud of you." "Following my career," Lily repeated slowly. "But never reaching out. Never sending a birthday card or a message. Just watching from a distance." I know that sounds cowardly, because it was. I was a coward, Lily. I made a terrible mistake when you were 3 years old, and then I compounded that mistake by staying away. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to know you, to be part of your life going forward. What does being part of my life mean to you?" Lily asked, and I heard the steel in her voice. My granddaughter was not going to make this easy for him. Damien shifted in his chair. "It means getting to know each other. Having conversations. Maybe spending time together occasionally. Letting me support your career and your dreams however I can." "Support my career," Lily said. "How would you do that?" And there it was, the opening he'd been waiting for. "Well, you're 15 now, on the verge of major career decisions. You'll be looking at music schools, managing the Deutsche Grammophon contract, doing international performance tours. That's a lot for a teenager to handle, even with Dorothy's support. I'm a lawyer with experience in contract negotiation and business management. I could help make sure you're getting fair deals, that your interests are protected, that you're making smart decisions about your future. Patricia and I exchanged a glance. He'd revealed his interest faster than we'd expected. And would you expect compensation for this help? Patricia asked directly. Mitchell Richardson cleared his throat. Mr. Morrison simply wants to be helpful to his daughter. Any discussion of compensation or formal arrangements would be premature at this point. But not off the table, Patricia pressed. Let's focus on rebuilding the relationship first, Richardson said smoothly. Business matters can be discussed later if and when Lily decides she wants her father involved in her career management. Lily's hand tightened on mine again. She'd heard it too, the plan beneath the performance. Damien, she said quietly, I have a question. Of course. Anything. Did you follow my career before Vienna? Before I won $4.5 million? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Damien's face flushed slightly. I've been following your career for several years, he said, but there was hesitation now. Several years. Can you tell me where I performed 2 years ago? Or what competitions I won when I was 10? I'd have to check my records. I remember there were several competitions, but the specific names. The Pacific Northwest Youth Competition, Lily said. The Seattle Young Artist Award. The National Youth Piano Masters where I placed 3rd. I was in the Seattle Times, Damien. There was a video that went viral with 2 million views. Did you see any of that? The silence was damning. I may have missed some of your earlier accomplishments, Damien said carefully. But, you didn't miss them. You ignored them. Because they weren't big enough to be worth your attention. A blind 9-year-old winning regional competitions wasn't interesting to you. But a blind 15-year-old winning $4.5 million? That's worth flying to Seattle and staying at an expensive hotel. Lily, that's not fair. What's not fair, Lily said, her voice shaking but strong, is that you left me in a hospital when I was 3 years old because I was too expensive and too difficult. What's not fair is that Grandma raised me on $1,400 a month while you built a new life in Portland. What's not fair is that you weren't there for any of the hard parts, the nightmares, the therapy, the learning to navigate the world without sight, the fear, the loneliness. You weren't there for any of it. But now that I've won money, now that I'm successful, you want to support my career? I made a mistake, Damien said, and now genuine emotion was cracking through the performance. I was young and scared and I made a terrible mistake. But I'm trying to make it right now. By trying to get involved in managing my money? By trying to be your father. You're not my father, Lily said, and the finality in her voice was devastating. You're the man who donated DNA. Dorothy is the one who raised me. Dorothy is the one who sat with me through every nightmare. Dorothy is the one who worked herself to exhaustion to pay for my lessons and competitions. Dorothy is the one who believed in me when I had nothing to offer but potential. You're not my father. You're a stranger who wants something from me. Damien's face had gone pale. That's not. I don't want anything from you except a relationship. Then sign a document saying you have no claim to any of my current or future earnings, Patricia said calmly. If this is purely about relationship and not about money, that should be easy to agree to. Mitchell Richardson immediately bristled. That's completely unnecessary and premature. It's a simple test, Patricia continued. If Mr. Morrison's interest is truly in rekindling a father-daughter relationship with no ulterior financial motives, he should have no problem legally waiving any claim to Lily's money or earnings. If he objects, well, that tells us what this is really about. Damien and Richardson exchanged a look, a quick, telling glance that confirmed everything we'd suspected. We'd need time to consider any legal documents, Richardson said carefully. Of course, Patricia said. Take all the time you need. But until you're willing to sign a legal waiver of any financial claims, I think we have our answer about what motivated this reconciliation attempt. Lily stood up, her movements careful but confident. I think we're done here. Lily, please, Damien said, standing as well. Don't shut me out because of money. I want to know you. I want to be your father. She turned her face toward him, and even though she couldn't see him, the look on her face was withering. You had 12 years to be my father. You chose not to. You chose your comfort, your new wife, your perfect life. You made that choice, Damien. And now I'm making mine. I don't need you. I don't want you in my life. Please don't contact me again. She held out her hand for me, and I took it, guiding her toward the door. Mrs. Patterson, Mitchell Richardson said, I think you should know that we're prepared to file a motion to challenge the termination of parental rights if necessary. Mr. Morrison has legal options. Patricia smiled coldly. And I think you should know that if you file any such motion, we will fight it with every resource at our disposal. We have 12 years of documentation showing Mr. Morrison's complete absence from Lily's life. We have financial records showing he contributed nothing to her care. We have the timing of his sudden interest coinciding exactly with her financial success. And we have Lily herself, who is 15 years old and whose wishes will be strongly considered by any judge. File your motion, Mr. Richardson. I welcome the opportunity to demonstrate in open court exactly what kind of man Damien Morrison is. We left them sitting in that conference room, and I felt Lily shaking beside me. We made it to my car before she completely broke down, sobbing against my shoulder. I wanted him to be real, Grandma, she cried. I wanted him to actually want me, not just my money. I know, sweetheart. I know. Why am I not enough? Why wasn't I enough 12 years ago, and why am I only interesting to him now because I'm worth money? You are enough. You've always been enough. His failure to see that is his loss, not your fault. We sat in the car for an hour while Lily cried out 12 years of abandonment and the fresh pain of rejection. Finally, exhausted, she pulled back and wiped her face. Thank you for protecting me, she said quietly. Always, sweetheart. Always. We didn't hear from Mitchell Richardson again for 3 weeks. Then Patricia got a letter informing us that Damien Morrison had decided not to pursue any legal action regarding his daughter. He was respecting Lily's wishes, and would not attempt to contact her again. The letter didn't mention the newspaper article that had been published 2 days earlier, a piece I'd worked with a journalist friend to place in the Seattle Times. The article detailed Damien's abandonment of his blind 3-year-old daughter, his 12 years of absence and non-support, and his sudden attempt at reconciliation immediately following her $4.5 million competition victory. It included quotes from Patricia, financial documentation of everything I'd paid for Lily's care while Damien contributed nothing, and a statement from Lily herself about the pain of being abandoned and the suspicious timing of her father's return. The article went viral. Damien's law firm was flooded with negative calls and emails. His reputation in Portland took a serious hit. And any plans he'd had to profit from his daughter's success disappeared in the harsh light of public scrutiny. I didn't feel guilty about it. He'd tried to exploit his abandoned daughter. He deserved every consequence. 6 months later, Lily and I attended the Grammy Awards, where she was nominated for Best Classical Solo Instrumental Album for her debut recording with Deutsche Grammophon. She didn't win, but sitting in that audience, watching my 16-year-old granddaughter walk the red carpet in a beautiful gown, being interviewed by reporters, being celebrated as one of the most exciting young classical musicians in the world, that was victory enough. Grandma, she said during the ceremony, leaning over to whisper to me, I know I said this before, but thank you. For everything. For taking me when no one else wanted me. For believing in me. For sacrificing your whole retirement to raise me. I wouldn't be here without you. I squeezed her hand, tears in my eyes. You would have been extraordinary no matter what, sweetheart. I just had the privilege of being there to watch it happen. That night, after the ceremony, we went back to our hotel room and Lily played a Chopin nocturne on the room's piano, not for performance, not for practice, just for the pure joy of making music. I sat on the couch and listened, thinking about the long journey we'd taken together. From that hospital room 12 years ago, where I'd held a traumatized 3-year-old and promised never to leave her, to this moment, sitting in a Los Angeles hotel after the Grammys, watching a 16-year-old virtuoso play for the sheer pleasure of it. Damien had thrown away something precious, and he would never get it back. He'd chosen comfort over love, money over family, his own ease over his daughter's needs. And in doing so, he'd lost the chance to be part of something truly extraordinary. I'd chosen differently. I'd chosen love over comfort, family over ease, Lily's needs over my own retirement dreams. And in return, I'd gotten to witness a miracle, the transformation of an abandoned, blind 3-year-old into a confident, talented, remarkable young woman who would touch millions of lives with her music. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Margaret. "I just saw you on the news coverage of the Grammys," she said excitedly. "You looked so proud, Dot." And Lily looked absolutely radiant. "She was incredible," I said, unable to keep the pride out of my voice. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Margaret said. "That phone call you made 12 years ago at 3 a.m., telling me Damien had left and you were taking Lily. You were so scared. You didn't know if you could do it." "I remember. But you did it, Dot. You raised that little girl into a superstar. You proved that love and dedication matter more than money or youth or perfect circumstances. I'm so proud of you." After we hung up, I walked to the window and looked out over Los Angeles. Somewhere in this city, there were probably hundreds of other grandparents raising grandchildren, stepping up when parents failed, sacrificing their golden years to give traumatized kids a second chance. And somewhere in Portland, Damien Morrison was living with his choices, knowing that he'd abandoned something precious and that no amount of regret or legal maneuvering could bring it back. I'd made my choice 12 years ago in that hospital hallway. I'd chosen to be family to a child who needed me, even when it was hard, even when I didn't know if I could do it, even when it meant sacrificing everything I'd planned for my retirement. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because some things are worth more than comfort or convenience or ease. Some things, some people, are worth everything you have to give. Lily was worth it. She'd always been worth it. And Damien Morrison would spend the rest of his life knowing that he'd thrown away the most precious thing he'd ever had, all because he'd been too selfish to see its value when it wasn't accompanied by a dollar sign. Justice, I decided, sometimes arrives late but with perfect timing.